Okay, thank you, everybody, and welcome to the San Benito County Board of Supervisors meeting of June the 16th. We will start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Botello, if you could lead us, and then we're going to stand for a moment of silence for Joe Wadon, former San Benito County librarian.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, if we have our Miss San Benito Rodeo 2015, if she could come up to the podium, welcome.
No, just certificate of posting.
Oh, I'm sorry, acknowledged certificate of posting, if I could have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, welcome.
Hi, my
Hi.
name is Bailey Nelson. I am Miss San Benito Rodeo 2014. And my name is Megan Ford, and I'm Miss San Benito Rodeo 2015. And today we're here to let you know what's going on in the next couple of weeks with the Saddle Horse Show. This Saturday we have, or this Sunday, this Sunday we have our membership barbecue. On next Thursday we have our downtown parade, and Friday is our opening performance.
On Saturday at 11 o'clock is the Western Art and Tax Show, and following that at 1:30 is the performance of the rodeo. On Sunday at 11 o'clock it's the Western Art and Tax Show, and at 1:30 the performance starts the rodeo.
Sunday is also our awards day, so all of the cowboys and cowgirls that are out there to perform are going to win their awards. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you so much. We look forward to the event, and I think most of us do enjoy the parade, and so we will see you there.
I sure hope.
We also have our dinner on Saturday night after the performance.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Patella?
I sure hope the monitor caught all the times. It's a real event-filled, packed weekend, and a very important tradition here in San Benito County that's a lot of fun for all of us, and hopefully all of the citizens at some point can enjoy the rodeo and support the Saddle Horse Show.
Okay. On June 25th, in case the public didn't catch it, June 25th is the parade downtown at 6 o'clock. And then the rodeo starts on Friday, the 26th, through the 28th. And I think she said the dinner was on Saturday. Yes. And I believe that's the 27th. Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. We'll move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the board on items that are not on the agenda, please do so at this time. Clerk of the board, do you have any?
Mr. Marty Richmond.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. Marty Richmond from Hollister. It's not on this agenda for the budget, and therefore I want to cover something that I didn't have time for during the budget hearings that deals with the budget. I wanted to make sure that the members of the board and the staff understand how much I appreciate the hard work that went into doing what I think, in my opinion, was misnamed, which was the status quo budget. Enormous amount of work. I hope the staff didn't think that I didn't appreciate how much work there must be in looking up all the step increases, applying all the increases for CalPERS, making all the adjustments in the thing. It is very useful information. My only point that I was trying to make, and I didn't have time to make, was to try and put it into a more useful form. In other words, it is useful information, but I think there ought to be a separate report that essentially has every macro impact on it by department. So you have the macro impact. For a perfect example would be the new sick leave policy. So if we estimate the new sick leave policy is going to raise something across the board, so we would have the departments on the column on the left, and each column would have the macro impact. So you could see At the bottom, what the total budget impact would be, for instance, of step increases that year. There's nothing you can do about it. The step increases are built into your contract agreements and so on and so forth, but at least you know where it's going. I didn't want anybody to think that I'm just brushing off the enormous amount of work that went in to dealing with those numbers. And I want to thank Melinda and the staff and the CAO for putting them together. The only problem was when you only get the top number, it's very difficult to use that in this decision-making process and to understand which component of it came from CalPERS, which component of it came from the new sick leave policy adopted by the state, which component came from STEPS. And I think if you had a separate report to that degree, it would make it very useful. I was trying to find a name for it. I couldn't find anything very slick, but, with some great acronym, but it's something about the macro impacts to the budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Any other cards?
No other cards.
Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board at this time? Okay, we'll move on to department head announcements. CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Yes, we'd like to invite our DA, our district attorney, up. She has the department head announcements. Candace Hooper.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A few weeks ago, the board okayed funding for janitorial service, and I just want you to know that last week our office finally got cleaned. It's kind of comparing it, this is horrible, but like to an outhouse out of Branding to a bathroom inside a house. So we really appreciate it, and I was handed the grand jury report this morning, and that's one of the items they got me on, so thank you.
We also have a department head announcement out of our library. We have Nora Conte.
Good morning, board members and members of the public and those that are at home. I just wanted to thank the board for taking a moment of silence to remember our county librarian for 25 years here at San Benito County. First of all, I'd like to just share that I did not know her personally, but I did have time to talk to her on the phone many a time about our library and about library service, and she was a wonderful resource for me, always willing to share, always willing to support the vision of the library. Joe Adon did many, many amazing things here at this library from what I hear, wonderful comments about her as a humanitarian, as reaching out to the community and maintaining the vision and the hope of community for a vibrant library. So thank you, board, for remembering that contribution from our previous county librarian, Joe Adon. This is going to be an exciting year for the library. I have spoken to you about Scenic, and that's going to happen. Also, the self-checks, also something that's going to happen. I'm excited about that. And this year, I put some of the summer reading program flyers out so that each one of you might want to take one with you. This year, we are proud to say that we have 8 partners that we are working with this year because it is about rhythm, because it's about reading. We are working with the San Benito County Arts Council and the Arts League. They will be working with us in providing art programs. The COG is also supporting us as a partner as they've placed flyers about Summer Reading Club in their buses. The Ballet Folklorico will be coming and instructing the children in a variety of dance and music. And First Five, of course, is there as our partner, helping us with staff and supplies and things like that. The Friends of the Library will also be there to support us with our programs. Also, Mountain Mike continues to be a partner in Summer Reading Club. So I wanted to acknowledge all of these community partners and agencies that are working with the library in concert to promote reading in our library and our community. Another very exciting thing, and I know other people have to come up, but this is really exciting. The library will be working in concert with Hollister Recreation Department, the Police Activities League, the Friends of the Library, in promoting reading at the different games that will be taking place this year. It's called Read Around the Bases. And so we're really excited about this because already they have 500 kids signed up for the game. So I'll be telling you more about this as it evolves. But thank you so much. Please remember to pick up one of the flyers that I left out on the table and help us to promote reading, a love of reading for all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora, and thank you for recognizing Jo Wadon. If I'm not mistaken, she's the one that helped, one of the founders for Barrios Unidos, that later became Hollister Youth Alliance, and so we're very grateful for her contribution to our community. CAO?
Yes, we do have one more announcement. We would request to pull item 80, or 18, excuse me, 18 to be heard on our consent agenda. There's some changes that were brought to my attention that need to be discussed.
Item
this
number
morning.
18 on the
18,
consent.
18, that
Okay,
comes from
and
our
that's
Health and Human
pulled
Services.
for discussion?
For discussion. Mhm. And that's all the announcements, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to board announcements, and I'll start off with Supervisor De La Cruz.
None today, Madam Chair.
Okay. Supervisor Botello?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Rivas and I attended a governance committee meeting last week, and that's a meeting with the City of Hollister, San Bernardino County Water District, Sunny Slope Water District, and as everybody probably is aware, there's been a real big, project that's been ongoing in our community with the salt plant, expanding that to give it a wider area of service in the Sunny Slope and the east part of Hollister, including the Ridgemark area in the Sunny Slope Water District jurisdiction. And that plant is up and running completely. And so there's a little higher quality of water being distributed in those areas. And the good news is people could get rid of their water softeners. Really no need for it. And as far as the West Hills project, which is a big treatment plant on the west side of, and supposed to service the west side of Hollister, that's still ongoing. They've are having a little bit of an issue with the habitat banking mitigation, but hopefully that will be resolved soon. So that was the update on that water project. So that's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Botello. Supervisor Munzer said he had nothing to report. Supervisor Rivas will be late this morning. And if he doesn't show up before we finish with board announcements, I will make an announcement for him. So first of all, I want to thank staff for the budget hearings that we completed yesterday. I think it was in record time that we completed those hearings. Thank you, everyone. I know we thanked them yesterday, but I want the public to know how much work was done, how successful we were, what a smooth plan was presented to us and to the public. And I think really it was all about planning, because the mock hearings, having those ahead of time of the actual hearings, really helps us to go through those quite smoothly. So again, thank you to the staff. And in intergovernmental, we discussed a couple of items that may be of interest to the community, and one of them is the tobacco shops downtown, where some of the community is concerned about too many of those perhaps showing up. We also need to be concerned about violating business rights, but they're going to look into what are other communities, what are other cities, what are other counties doing to prevent these from showing up at every corner, and particularly near our schools. So that will be discussed a little further. It'll continue to be on our intergovernmental agenda. The other thing that was discussed at intergovernmental was the San Benito River, the garbage that has been piling up over the years near the bridge on San Juan Road. It continues to get worse, and I know that area is city, so the city is going to look to see what we can do to address that. So we'll report more on a plan later. Since Supervisor Rivas is not here right now, what he recommended to me yesterday, and I was very pleased to support him because this is my nephew he was talking about. My nephew, Roy Sims, won the National Sumo Wrestling Award in Kansas City, Missouri over the weekend. And this is the second event that he participated in the U.S. Open in Long Beach, and he got a bronze medal. But in Kansas City, Missouri, he actually won the national championship in sumo wrestling. So, thank you very much. And so Supervisor Rivas wants to recognize him with a certificate of recognition. I told him I would support him, of course. And so I'm hoping that we can do that on July the 21st. Okay, that's all I have to announce. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda items. Anybody from the public that would like to, pull any of the agenda items, consent agenda items at this time? Okay, I know item number 18 has been pulled. Anybody, any board members that would like to pull any of the consent agenda items? No? Okay, I will entertain a motion for the remaining.
I'll move to approve the amended consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 18, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to invite James Riding Sword. He's our Health and Human Services Director. Up.
To begin with, on item number 18, in consultation with County Council yesterday, we made a change to page 4 of 4 on the first attachment, and it's under the section called Goals and Timeline, which you should have. The first item has been changed to say qualification of participants eligible for the Helping Hands program, and that will be provided by the county. So let me just take a minute to talk about this particular item. This is an agreement that we're bringing to the board between the county and the Homeless Coalition. It's a 2-month extension on the Helping Hands contract. We have divided up the responsibilities between the Homeless Coalition and the county at our Community Services and Workforce Development Division. Basically, the Homeless Coalition has agreed for the next 2 months to carry all of the activities that have to do with lease management and working with landlords and things like that. The county has agreed to carry all of the activities that have to do with determining if people are eligible for the Helping Hands program, and also to do the case management, which means working with people that are in apartments who are homeless, who need help to coordinate services and benefits and things like that. We have extended this contract for 2 months, and at the end of 2 months or before the end of 2 months, we'll be back in front of the board with a contract for the balance of the fiscal year. It'll either be an extension with the Homeless Coalition or a balance of year contract with another provider. And we'll be in discussion about that as we go forward. So we're asking the board to take action today to approve this extension with the changes that we're presenting this morning.
Thank you, Jim. Any comments, questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public regarding this item? I'll bring it back for a decision.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item 18 with the changes recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to our public hearing section of our agenda, and we'll start off with item number 27. CAO Espinosa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the next three items will be for public hearing. The first item of discussion this morning is item 27. This, again, is coming out of our Health and Human Services Agency, and we have James Writing Sword here to present it. Basically, what we're requesting is to hold a public hearing to receive public comments on the 2016-17 Community Action Plan, adopt resolution approving 2016-17 Community Service Block Grant, Community Action Plan, and authorizing the Director of Health and Human Services to execute grant agreements, amendments, and other documents. So we have Jim here.
Okay. All right. I just need to get this up in front of me.
That's fine, Jim. Take
Yeah.
your time.
So. Yeah, it's item- Yeah. This item didn't make it to my folder, so I need to,
Okay. You know what we can do, Jim? We can move on to item number 28, if I have the consensus
Sure.
of the board, and give you an opportunity
Yeah.
to get organized with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
CAO, we're going to go ahead and open public hearing number 28.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
so if you could go ahead and
That'll-
introduce that? Oh, you got it? Okay.
Okay.
Never mind, we're back on schedule, number 27.
no. Okay, we'll come back.
You'll come back,
Okay.
okay.
I'll let Ray know.
All right.
So what we'll do is I'll have Sarah actually pull that up on the computer for him. And
Oh,
then,
okay, very
but we'll go ahead and continue with 28. So we have our next item on our agenda as coming out of Public Works. We have Joe Hordle here to give this particular item. This will be holding a public hearing and adopt resolution initiating proceedings for the formation of a new CSA, or in the alternative, annexation into existing CSA number 9, Ridgemark. Direct the Public Works Department to prepare and file the required engineer's report. Joe?
And I will, Ray just covered it. I think it's pretty simple. So we've talked about it a little bit before, just adding into the existing Ridgemark for the new 14 lots. And so we do need to open the public hearing.
Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Anybody from the public that would like to speak on item number 28? Okay. There being none, I will close the public hearing. And Joe?
Yep, so we will go through and, assuming board approval, move forward with the engineer's report and take the next steps to actually complete the annexation process. And so asking for board approval on the resolution to initiate.
Okay, very good. What's the pleasure of the board?
Okay, so I guess I will move that. I'm trying to read if I'm in the right place here. The,
22?
yeah, that. This is not written very well.
So it's adopting the resolution initiating the proceedings for the formation of the new county service area or annexing into the existing CSA 9. So that would be adopt the resolution.
We're not creating a new one.
Correct. Annexation into CSA 9.
Okay, so we adopt that resolution, and do we have a number?
48,
I've got the number.
49.
Should I just tell him that it's kind of written in the alternative, but
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
right now already says that he wants to-
2015-49,
or should I just-
annexation into the existing CSA number 9 Ridgemark, direct Public Work Department to prepare and file the required engineer's report.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, are we ready with item 27? If not, we'll move on to item 29.
Yeah, I believe we're ready for item number 27. Jim?
Okay?
Okay. So this is to conduct a public hearing on the Community Services Block Grant Community Action Plan. And it's submitted for your approval and for public hearing as required by the state. Each community action agency must submit an annual plan that describes how the Community Services Block Grant funds will be used in the upcoming year. The Community Action Board has completed the plan, which involved receipt of public comment at a public hearing on the needs of the low-income residents of the county and completion of a strategic planning process with the board's planning committee. Community Services Block Grant funding, it's a federal block grant that is administered by the State Department of Community Services and Development. It's allocated to each county's designated community action agency, which resides in our Health and Human Services Agency, through a formula process. Our Community Services Workforce Development Division is the designated community action agency for our county. As San Benito County does not meet the designated population threshold, it receives a minimum allocation of $251,277 for fiscal year 15-16. The Community Services and Workforce Development is one of the primary agencies working to address the needs of our low-income community, including homeless services, rental assistance, utility assistance, and job training programs. We asked the board to open and conduct a public hearing on this particular plan that we need to submit to the state, and then approve the submittal of the plan to the state with the required signatures.
Okay, thank you, Jim. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. Anyone from the public that would like to address the board on item number 27? There being none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a decision.
I'll move that we approve Resolution 2015-48, Madam Chair,
Okay, per staff recommendation?
for staff recommendation.
Okay, there's a motion. I will second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last public hearing, item number 29, CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this particular item is coming out of administration. We have Sarah Fontanos here to give this presentation or to give this item For discussion, it is to hold a public hearing and adopt resolution regarding revisions to rate schedule at John Smith Road landfill, adopt resolution revising the rate schedule at John Smith Road landfill, and take effect July 1st, 2015, and approve the payment of $250,000 to Waste Solutions Group LLC. So again, we have Sarah here. Sarah?
Good morning, everybody. So this item will be publicly noticed for the landfill rates again in July, but it should be effective for the 3 changes that we discussed a couple meetings ago for packer, refuse, and residual waste. Each of those fees being increased by $1.75, hoping to promote diversion at the landfill, because those are all materials that are buried. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'm available.
Now, this is the public hearing that we will continue to July 21st.
Right, so because the item, the fee increase requires publication twice within a 10-day period, we need to open up the public hearing today, take testimony from the public, and then continue the public hearing until July 21st. And then, as Sarah indicated, prior to the July 21st meeting, the notice will be published twice within the 10-day period as required by the statute.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, what I will do now is open the public hearing, but we'll continue it to July the 21st. So I will not close the public hearing. It will be continued. So I will open it at this time for item number 29. Anyone from the public that would like to address the board? There being none, I will continue this public hearing to July the 21st. And we will make a decision after that, we close it on that date.
Yes.
Correct, Counsel? Thank you. Okay, the next item is our first regular agenda item, and first 5 San Benito, item number 30. CEO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this particular item is going to be presented to us by Lisa Faulkner, Executive Director for First 5. This particular item is going to be discussing the approval of separation agreement and memorandum of understanding between San Benito County and First 5 San Benito. And so we have Lisa here to discuss this. Lisa?
Thank you, Ray, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors for seeing us back from First 5. We're here today to ask for approval of the separation agreement. In 1998, the Family and Children's Trust Fund was established, and I think maybe, Jaime, you were involved in the original First 5, and the County Board of Supervisors elected to participate in the Children and Families Fund. And so on April, we appreciated the support of an ordinance that was passed to separate First 5 from the county. So we are a state agency, and we will continue to comply with the state regulations, the audits, and the annual reports, but we're just removing a layer of government with this separation agreement. And so we're here today. I'd like to thank the county staff, county council, and Barbara Thompson and Ray, and the auditor's office for all the work that they've done. It's been an extensive process trying to separate, bring to an end all the different entanglements that we have with the county, and we feel like we're on our way. We've gotten all the pieces in place. We're looking for this last approval so we can formalize our agreements to our outside contractors. So if anyone has any questions about the agreement.
Any questions from the board on this item? Okay. You've completed your report, Lisa?
I could go through this report if there were any questions about our due diligence, but it's pretty well documented. We've spent a lot of time with Barbara and going back and reviewing it with all the county staff, so I think we're in a position that we have a clear understanding of what our relationship will be with the county after we separate. And I passed around a document for each one of the supervisors that show that we answer through our own physical contractors, our own evaluators, and we prepare an annual report, and that process will not change for us. And then that letter that I passed around is the State Controller's Office confirming that we're in good standing. So it's my intention and our hopes as an agency that we'll maintain a relationship with the Board of Supervisors. You'll see me coming back to update the board on our strategic plan, and we will share our evaluation and our financial audits with the county. And we have enjoyed the support of the county. It was a good idea to have the first 5 San Benito. We've learned a lot about our program, the trust. We've done a lot of growing, and we've, with Barbara's help too, she's really set us in a direction where we understand the liability involved as our agency. And so with this document, it provides our safeguards that are in place. So, for example, we're contracting out for legal services with a former county council from Santa Clara, and she represents First 5 Santa Clara as well as Monterey. So that will be our legal counsel. We've also engaged fiscal services from the Health Trust. So the CFO of the Health Trust will be ensuring that we are in compliance with our fiscal. So we've outsourced for administrative services as well. So as we go down this list, we're really aware of the services that were provided by the county. We do, I would say in the next month and a half, I've got about 6 grants that will be due. And that's our biggest thing, that those grants come with personnel, that when we take money in, outside money, we need people and specific job descriptions that relate to those positions, and it's our intent that we're going to grow revenue to ultimately benefit San Benito County. And so we realize that as we separate from the county, that any liability is really First 5. That was the intention of the trust, that there won't be any liability left for the county. And so that was something that First 5 Commission was aware of and took accountability for, and you'll see that throughout our agreement. I think that we are thanking the county staff in advance for the separation and transition period. So there's a lot of details that we're sharing in this audit this year, and so we're going to be looking at balances and really closing the year out in a clean way. So that's our commitment on that. So there's a lot more information. So unless anyone has any questions, that's all I'm reporting out.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that there are any questions, but I do have a comment that I sit on the First 5 Commission, and I'm supportive of this. I know that it's been a lot of work to get there. Lisa has been instrumental in connecting with the state of California to make sure that we have gone through the processes we should have. We will continue to be part of the county in the sense that there will be reporting. We will have representation there. And so it really has been, like I said, a tough road, but we're here now. And the way the agreement is set up, there's a lot of criteria that has to be met. I believe we're almost there, but it will not happen unless that criteria does get met. But I think that we're making good effort in doing it, and we will be there by July the 1st. So.
Yeah, we just need your signature on this letter of agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. So thank you. And we started out, a while back, so we were serving dozens of children and families. We're in hundreds now because of the way the strategic plan has moved forward. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the public on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for a decision. And I will make a motion that we approve this separation agreement per staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. The memorandum of understanding, yeah. So my first motion will be for the separation agreement, and there's a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And the second part of it is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the San Benito County Health and Human Services Agency and First 5 San Benito relating to the provision of services of parent health educator, and authorize the director of HHSA to sign it. That's my motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we'll move on to item number 30?
30.
I believe. No, I'm sorry,
31.
31?
31.
CAO Espinosa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this item is also coming out of administration. Your board requested, actually, the direction of Supervisor Robert Rivas had requested at our last board meeting to bring this item open for discussion, dealing with Nash Road. We did invite the city manager, so he'll be here to add comments of where the city's at with this, as well as the schools as well. But to kick off, we're going to go ahead and have Sarah kind of give a quick brief of kind of where we're at, what's been discussed, what's been dealt with from our Public Works office as well as administration with regards to Nash Road, the closure in the parks. So, Sarah?
Good morning, everyone, again. So yes, let's go back to last July 2014, when Adam Goldstone was still present to us, and a few months prior to that, when I actually first arrived with the county. From about February to that January, several meetings occurred between the school board, internal staff, and then finally commencing to a meeting in July with internal with the city and a few members of the school board, and Superintendent John Perales, I believe, was there as well. At that meeting, we discussed a lot of the internal workings, talking about parkway access, the need for a temporary closure, and what options could be looked at. We discussed ballots and why overpasses over that area were so expensive and engineer-wise just wouldn't work. And on that day, and I remember, I believe, a board member from the school saying, or perhaps it was Chair Barrios, saying it's taken 20 years to really have this conversation. And I actually took photos that day of handshaking and everyone being really excited about the agreement to move forward with something in writing, to get everybody together, to say, yes, we're going to look at this all together and agree to something and step in together with our toe in the water and see how it worked. Not necessarily closing anything that day, but bringing everything to the prospective councils and boards. In January, that written agreement was provided to the board and approved. Later on that month, it was also given to the City Council of Hollister. And I want to say, a lot of the factors, I believe, in this confusion is you have to remember, during these times, it was a very critical point of one, something really great happening with Nash Road and the movement forward of Regional Park, but also with staff changes and even city council member changes. Adam Goldstone left. He was a huge part of this process over the last few years. I came in, interim Public Works Director Joe Horwittle as well, so we were trying to hold the pieces together. And I will say some miscommunications did occur. Perhaps I didn't do my job well enough to be continuing those conversations as my predecessor Adam did before me. So I think some prime opportunities for informing the city council were definitely missed at that meeting. Hence, a decision was made to not approve that written agreement at that time. Since then, multiple meetings happened with the school board and the public discussing those concerns, obviously. And then the most recent joint board meeting where a few of the council members did mention their willingness to be open, and their decision was based on the fact that they didn't have all the information before them. At that meeting, I did ask for them to remain open and patient for information because the CEQA EIR for the Regional Parkway is underway. We did receive legal comments back as of, I believe it was June 1st. Staff has scheduled a series of meetings to make sure that the legal comments and staff are working to complete what we need to. And that deadline is set at July 15th. We're planning to have all those comments back and responses to any questions. August 1st is our deadline to have all that information in a nice, pretty package sent off to Rincon. And so we're hoping between August and October that document is released. Now, I remind you, the importance of that document is the required section of transportation, as required by CEQA. Given the location of the park project, it will focus on the surrounding area, and transportation will be discussed there. That's a huge piece, I think, that everybody here, and I think even members of the public, have been missing. And I believe that once that document is released, a lot of questions will be answered and more positive movement can occur. I am happy, I think, to hear, and maybe this is where I'll invite City Manager Avera up. It appears that the City of Hollister is open to discussion, and I guess I'm just hoping that it remains at the very minimum until that EIR is released so we can have some facts in front of us and really look at it all together. So with that, if it's fine with you, CAO?
I'm going to go ahead and ask the clerk of the board if he has any speaker cards first.
Yes, we have John Perales, the superintendent of San Benito High School, and Ray Rodriguez, the president of San Benito High School District Board.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board of Supervisors. I appreciate the opportunity to address you. As a superintendent of the San Benito High School District, I appreciate the willingness of the county to work with our school board. As Sarah mentions, it's been, well, just about a year now since we started these discussions, and there were a lot of happy faces on that day, and I believe it was a board member, DeLay, who mentioned in his comments that it had been about 20 years that these discussions have been taking place to find a solution to close Nash Road in the effort to provide a safer, significantly safer environment for our students and staff and even our surrounding community members. When we left that meeting, as Sarah mentioned, there were no agreements, officially made, but we walked out of that meeting knowing and feeling like an agreement was imminent, and that we would go back and work with our boards and our attorneys to draft a memorandum of understanding or a binding document that would ensure that this would continue forward. As far as I'm aware, and please, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, you as an entity have set aside the monies necessary to build the bypass road. You've been open to that discussion. You've been open to the temporary closure of Nash Road, especially between Monterey and West Streets. And you are open to continuing to work with the district and the city to build that park area, which I think is much needed, especially now in light that we are in desperate need of a pool, and we're looking to hopefully move that forward sooner rather than later. So my comments here this morning are in appreciation of your support, in appreciation of your open dialogue and candidness to work with us and to support the efforts of not only improving our community by providing these much needed recreation areas, but also helping us keep our students safe. I will add that we did have a staff member hurt on the Thursday of last week by a car on Nash Road. So we continue to struggle with the safety of that area. So again, I commend you for working with us and continuing to keep this open dialogue between the board, my board of trustees, the city, and also you as supervisors. Those are my comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other speaker cards? Okay.
I'm sorry, President.
President of the board.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I've been here several times talking on this subject over probably a decade, and we've had other board members here probably for longer talking about it. So I do have to appreciate the cooperation and willingness to look outside of the box rather than status quo that this board has displayed. I don't have much more. I was wondering whether Superintendent Perales was going to tell you about our most recent incident. You know, one of the things that other school board members keep saying is it's not a matter of if, but when. And so this past week we had a when. And luckily, the person, it wasn't bad enough to be hospitalized. If there had been you know, and you hate to say, you have to appreciate that the staff member put themselves in between a moving vehicle and the students, and that staff member probably didn't stop the vehicle, but it could have been much worse for the staff member and for our students. In today's economy and the way the future looks, we have to realize as entities that we have to work together, and that's the difficult part, is who's going to go first. I think Sarah said toe in the water, and I've always said none of the entities want to be the first one out at the end of the diving board, trusting that everybody else is going to, you know, one entity is going to put water in the pool and the other entity is going to save them if they have trouble. And so, again, I appreciate your courage to participate in this. And this isn't the traditional joint use, but I think this is the first, again, toe in the water, because we're going to have to talk about joint use. The county's been looking at a library for a long time, and the school has to be willing to have the discussions on how we can combine a county library and a school, and if that's a possibility. We have to talk about, this county doesn't have a public swimming pool anymore. And that affects, you were talking about our low-income families. I think that affects our low-income families more than anybody else. And for the school district, conservatively for the school district to establish a pool that we could just compete in, which is a rectangle, we're talking $4 to $5 million, if not more. And then if we want to make it an aquatics facility that the community can enjoy afterwards, I mean, it's a chunk of money. We can't afford it by ourselves. The county can't afford it by themselves. The city can't afford it by themselves. And it just goes on and on about how all of our entities have to think about quality of life for all of our constituents. And the reality is, I think we're going to have to work together, and I appreciate your willingness to participate on this. Hopefully, we can do our best to convince the third party in this particular game to get on board, and we can make the MOU sufficient if we have to satisfy all parties that their interests are going to be met in the long term, and move forward and move forward with the next joint use. So again, I just come up to appreciate. I've been here before, pounding my fist and lambasting the board, saying we need to do something. I think you've all shown through your action that you appreciate we need to do something, and we need to figure out how to get this moving. Thank
Ray,
you.
the last time you were here, you did express to the board the need for this because of the safety of the kids, and you had full support of the board then. I believe there is still full support. I think you make great points, and that is still, for us, it's still in the forefront. We still need to move forward with that, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
it.
Any other speaker, Cory? Okay.
Actually, I did want to clarify one comment that was asked by the superintendent about the park maintenance, or the park road funding, and that came up yesterday to the Capitol. Adam and I chatted last night, and it was a nuance that doesn't show up in the budget, but it's of how all the pieces were going to work, and as you understand, it's kind of a Chinese puzzle. That the plan was we would go through and use monies for land acquisition for the district, essentially buy the land for the overall park, and then we would, kind of that money would come right back to us, and then we would build the road with that money. So while it shows up in the budget as land acquisition, the agreements between the parties that I wasn't aware of was actually then to use that $500,000 to go build the roadway, the bypass road. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So I'm sorry that I kind of didn't have that nuance for yesterday.
That's okay. I think that you've clarified it, and we did have a plan, so. Okay, anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this item?
Marty Richmond from Hollister. During the joint meeting at the Veterans Hall, I did get angry about some of the finger pointing about who's responsible. I don't belittle the safety concerns. I'm on record, and you guys can look it up in the minutes, of complaining about the fact that we didn't have traffic barriers, proper traffic barriers at the farmers market. There's a famous case out of Santa Monica where somebody stepped on the gas instead of on the brake and killed a bunch of people, and it happens more often than not these days. A lot of older people, like me, driving, and I don't belittle any of that, but neither do I belittle the concerns of the local residents. And you never belittle the concerns of your constituents when they come in here from CMCSA and say, I have a problem. You always listen, and you most often respond in some way. And I believe it was important to get the concerns of local residents on the record, and that we have, even from the superintendent himself, go out there and said, I didn't realize we had some of the problems we had with the pizza boxes and people parking all over the place. And he's had to kind of round up the folks from the high school and shepherd them over to the parking lot by his own testimony. So now that I got my vitriol out of the way, I did suggest that there's a road to get this done. And the road is a memorandum of understanding that puts everybody's responsibilities on a piece of paper. And everybody signs, just like we do on the water agreements, and everybody knows what they're responsible for. And the three parts that I asked for was that the city would give over the Nash Road, and I don't think it's a temporary closure. Personally, I think it's a permanent closure, but that's just a matter of semantics. When it's closed many hours a day and night for basketball games, that's a permanent closure. You might as well just close it. Give over that, and that the city would declare a special safety zone around the school, because young drivers are the most dangerous drivers. We all know that. The statistics are clear that they're more likely to kill someone than anyone else, even though that's a dangerous crossing. It's more likely a young driver who's going to, and if they don't kill somebody there, they'll go have an accident somewhere else, because that's what happens. They have no experience, and they often are reckless. And I was, when I was younger, I had no experience, and I was reckless. So it's not an insult. It's just the way it is when you're young. And so they would do that, and they would declare a special safety zone that they would monitor to make sure that the public is safe in that area. And the school would cooperate by using their authority to keep driving privileges on and off campus, and go out and monitor the parking. And I will wrap up. And the third item would be that you would agree to build the bypass during a certain time period after the EIR and so on and so forth. So I think if you do the MOU right, I think it's a doable thing. But everyone has to be protected, including the local residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Any other comments from the public? I'll bring it back to the board. All right.
Are we going to hear from Billy from the city
I
manager?
kind of would like to hear from.
Billy didn't seem to volunteer. Come on up, Billy. We have just volunteered you.
I think it's important to hear his perspective and what he interprets from his council as far as what the problem is.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Wow, if you're asking me to speak on behalf of my council, we have issues. No, I think the joint meeting at Vets Hall went really, really well. I think everybody's kind of on the same page as now what the expectation is. As you know, you can't just unilaterally close a road because it happens to be what you think or perceive to be the right thing to do. So I was glad to hear that Sarah spoke and talked about the CEQA process. I understand that the administrative draft is kind of is going through right now. I don't know if there was a scoping meeting or not. Doesn't really matter. We'll get to that point. I think the information that comes out of that document is what's most critical for the city of Hollister. If there's mitigations for closing Nash Road that can be accomplished by an MOU, and Marty's absolutely right. I mean, the council's concern, if I can speak on the council's behalf for a second, was whether or not the road was actually going to be built. Well, I think obviously before I would assume that, again, without seeing the CEQA document, is that before you close a road, you're going to have another road constructed. And I think that's a pretty simple thing to put into an MOU. That's not rocket science. But again, I think if there's mitigations, or if it's a significant, non-avoidable, and they need to make a statement of overriding consideration, I think that's just something that the council is going to have to look at when they have all the information sitting in front of them. And I think that's kind of what the CEQA process does, is make sure that decision makers have all the information required to make a decision, especially one about closing a road, temporarily or permanent or whatever the case is. But it is true that the council members that were, I guess, had stated with no uncertain terms that they were not interested in closing Nash roads, have at least expressed to us some desire to keep an open mind and seeing where this whole thing kind of plays out. And I think from staff's perspective is that, again, we just want to see what the traffic studies look like, and we'll go from there. But okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Billy.
All right. Well, is there any questions for me?
Any questions of Billy at this time?
Maybe.
Okay,
Don't go anywhere? All right.
No, just sit down.
Okay.
We'll get back to you. Okay, Supervisor Rivas, you have a comment?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to, I appreciate the school district being here, and Trustee Rodriguez. I remember when he was here in 2012, and certainly his message was received. He came here and pleaded with us to do something. That this was a public safety issue, and we certainly did. We took an incremental approach. We have the stop signs up there. We worked with the city to accomplish that. But that, it was my understanding that was just a temporary solution. And certainly those stop signs, they serve a purpose, but, it's only a stopgap measure. We've got to do something else. And ultimately, the goal was road closure, or, the next step would be the temporary closure, and then, let's move for the permanent closure. And so I really appreciate the city manager being here. I know this is a difficult situation. And what's difficult for me is, he said that the joint meeting went well. I don't think it went well, not for me or for our board. My wife and I, we just purchased a house on B Street, right around the corner, less than a block, or about a block from where this closure is about to happen. And my new neighbor started to vilify me, because our board supported closure. They started to take these comments that some council members made that we weren't going to fund the bypass. I assured them that we hadn't wasted our time for 3 years trying to find a solution to fund a bypass. In these recitals, this agreement that we passed, now it's a premature agreement, but this agreement basically says in the recitals that we're going to use this parkway access as a bypass, a commitment from our county to construct this road before closure could occur. And so I really, want to emphasize, I appreciate the city manager being here because we need to find a solution to this problem. I think what was said from trustee and from the superintendent, this is a perfect example and opportunity of intergovernmental cooperation. Yeah. The opportunity is there. This community has needs. And it begins with this closure, this road closure, and the impacts of this road closure. This is a public safety issue. Yes, I'm an employee, for full disclosure. I'm an employee at the school district. My conflict of interest is hopefully I don't get run over by a car someday by crossing that street a few times a day, let alone the hundreds of other students that cross that road. This is a matter of time. And as a trustee said, it's not a matter of if, but when. And I'm sure for some out there, they like the when to occur to me sooner rather than later. But, we really have to move on this. And the consequences of this road closure, the pools. We don't have access to the pools. And sure, those are San Benito High School's pools, but those are community pools. Summer rec programs are dependent on those pools, and now they're closed. So the sooner we find a solution to this problem, the sooner we come to an agreement between all parties, the district, the county, and the city, the sooner we close the road, there's going to be significant opportunity and some benefits, not for the county, not for the school district, but for our community. We've got to quit thinking in terms of our little fiefdoms here. We've got to do this for the benefit of students, for residents, and for, our community. We need pools. The sooner that we develop our regional park is a benefit for everybody. Can you imagine an aquatic center? Can you imagine a significant recreational area behind there, behind the high school? But obviously this has to happen with certain commitments in place. And I know as a board, we sent a strong message, 5-0, that we are committed to this project. We're committed to fund a bypass and to construct this road. And the sooner we get this done, the better. And I really hope that our council members, that we can work together. They certainly were very receptive to taking our money for a consolidation of fire services. So let's get on the right path and let's work together. This is for the benefit of the community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Supervisor Patello, then Supervisor De La Cruz.
Well, I'm not going to follow that up with that passion and that fire. And I appreciate all the comments that Supervisor Rivas made. I first want to thank all the school officials for making this meeting. It's really important to hear your perspective again on this issue of, you know, safety for your students and your staff. And I think all of us still feel very passionate about, you know, providing overall safety for our community. And I don't think anybody is off that page. It's just how we're to get there. And, you know, the added benefits is working together, as the superintendent stated, is to be the key for all of us, whether we're working together with fire, and public safety or recreation, and in this case, the road. And I think we could get to where we all need to be. I've been critical of, you know, closing Nash Road completely, and, you know, I participated in the meetings. I listened to what the concerns were, what the city also, you know, had issues with, and, you know, I thought we came away from those meetings with an agreement in place. And, you know, naturally, you can't have whole boards working on this. You appoint a couple of board members, a couple of councilmen, a couple of school board members, and they should have the confidence of their entire boards to, you know, negotiate in good faith and come with, you know, the best interests of what serves their constituency. And that's what we left that meeting with. And the county is committed to building that bypass road. It needs to be built, service the park, as well as solve a problem that the city has and the high school district has. If a MOU it needs to be kind of renegotiated, let's get together and talk about the issues and get this problem solved so we can move on and put a project on the ground and deal with the safety issues so nobody else gets hurt out there. You know, I'm sorry to hear that, you know, a staff member was hit. It shouldn't happen. And, you know, hopefully the high school district is promoting, you know, public transportation, bike riding, walking, ride share, and also taking into account the concerns of the neighborhood. But I know as one person, I don't drive by the high school at 3 o'clock, you know, or in the morning. I just take alternate routes into Hollister. I think most people do. And so, but there are some that still make that, you know, that their route into town. And so I suggest to the board, to the school district, Hollister, you know, let's get together and fix this problem, close this road, and so we can move on with, you know, the benefits that we all want to achieve. So I appreciate the cooperation because it's a joint agreements that is going to be the norm in this county. It has to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Batella. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got 3 or 4 nephews going to high school right now, and within the next couple of years, I'm going to have a whole wave of De La Cruzes going into the high school. In 10 years, I'll have my 2 grandkids going to high school, and I got to protect their best interests. We got to close that road. It's just common sense. It has to happen, and whatever I can do to help out, I'm here.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if I want to ask Joe or Sarah. In the EIR, there's obviously a traffic study being done, correct?
Yes.
And this traffic circulation
Yes.
is being studied? Because I do have concerns with, 2 concerns. Because I do drive by the high school. Usually I come by the high school in the mornings when I'm coming to town. The students that are stopping on San Benito Street trying to make a left-hand turn into the high school parking lot will back up traffic. We all know that the intersection of San Benito and Nash is below the lowest rating of Caltrans. It's below an F or whatever the lowest thing is. It's a mess in the mornings. I have some concerns that the Nash Road bypass is going to bring all that traffic out onto San Benito Street. People will be making a left-hand turn onto San Benito Street and then probably trying to make a right-hand turn, and there's not a lot of room to make right-hand turns onto Nash to continue east on Nash. I don't know if we're creating a bigger problem with this. So we have to look at that traffic circulation problem. The other issue is, are we moving the potential for an accident from Nash Road onto one of the side streets, onto B or one of the side streets? You know, that needs to be studied very well so that we're just not moving the problem from one street to another street. You know, this is not sitting well with me right now. The whole, you know, we did take the first step, and then I guess it was the vets part, or vets building meeting that everybody referred to, is where we were criticized for not being, you know, people could not trust us. That is not sitting well with me at this time. But anyway, that we'll go down that road another day. But I just, before I can continue to support this, I need to see the EIR and the circulation.
Absolutely.
And to hear, as Supervisor Rivas mentioned, we have tried to work with the city, and then the city has reneged on things. I need to hear that the city is committed to working with us also. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Munzer. Sarah, we're doing our due diligence. At this point, it's really a matter of process.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And as the process moves forward, we will be getting information as to what the next steps are so that we can continue to support it, work with the partners that we have, and make this happen.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, that is the path that we're taking. I want to thank all of you for coming, you know, the San Benito High School District, the City of Hollister. I don't want to put blame on anybody, because I think at this point, what we need to do is we need to move forward and make this happen. You know, no finger pointing, no like, well, we did this and didn't do this. Let's be real partners in this. We can do it. We've done it before. Now more than ever, as was said by the superintendent of San Benito High School, you know, we need this. We need this project. San Benito County deserves this. And I think a lot of what's happening right now is we're putting a stop to it. Is it going to take us another 20 years to make this happen? It shouldn't. Not when we have agencies that have, you know, agreed, not formally, because it has to go to the respective councils and boards, but there's a plan. I think if we continue to partner and do our due diligence, we can have this project moving forward in the next year or two. So I do appreciate that we're all committed to it, and as Supervisor Rivas said, this is an opportunity. Let's not miss this opportunity because we're being, you know, blaming or doing whatever. We need to take this opportunity to provide this kind of project for the community. So thank you, everybody. I look forward to continuing to get information and making sure that we move forward sooner than later. Supervisor Patello, you have another comment?
Yeah, I have a comment or a question. It's just, I don't want to leave this meeting with this too open-ended.
Right.
Where, you know, well, we'll get back to you guys when we're done with a certain amount of work. And I really want to have an agreement in place with the school district and with Hollister. If they're worried and don't trust us about building the road, which we have the money sitting there, and we want to build this road in order to trade for the land that we need for a regional park, let's get that business done and sign an MOU so we're not wasting money and time with our staff doing environmental work for something that Hollister may not agree just because they don't trust us, which doesn't make any sense in my mind at all where that is coming from. It's irresponsible on their part. But let's sit down, find out where the hole is to move forward, get it down in writing, then have our staff, you know, we're spending the money, they're not. And this way, we're assured that we're not just throwing money down a rat hole. And this is for the benefit of Hollister, not, you know, so that's where I'm at with
Yeah,
it.
it's for the benefit of the community as a whole. We'll all benefit from this.
So
Joe?
a little bit of observation is when the meeting happened in July, I think was like my second week here, and it was, you know, trying to figure out how to accommodate everybody's goals. And so the MOU that was put together, and County Council spent a lot of time thinking about that with us, of how to deal with the yes-ifs. Because there was a desire of all three parties to do something. But everybody, as you've heard, was waiting for somebody else to do something, and it was never going to happen. And I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but we've got the meeting out here. I think it's really clear to understand is the road doesn't happen without the land. The land doesn't happen without an understanding from the two agencies that control Nash Road that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So it's never going to move unless we could get the parties to say, I'm willing to take a half step. And so that's what we put forward in the MOU was, we're willing to go through and consider a temporary closure, to study it, to kind of understand what goes on. We're not agreeing to close it in its permanence. In exchange for that, the school district was willing to put the land into the deal that would allow us to then go build the bypass road, which would then allow us to have the conversation about a permanent closure. But if you can't get kind of that, everybody to rotate 90 degrees to start that, it's not going to happen. So I think it's going back to how to get all three parties in the room to say, I will say yes if. And let's make sure we're really laser clear about what those ifs are, and then kind of go back and tweak the MOU if we need to, but to, bring it back with the yeses.
That's what we need.
And I'm going to step up with Superintendent Perales here. We just had a little chat, and we could even possibly look at, why don't the county and the school just work together for the actual land swap and building of the park access road? Because there's still that need now, as we know better, for that pool that has just closed. So no matter what, the school will have some benefit there from the park, even more so now. So to move forward faster, the temporary closure could kind of be the supplemental hopeful benefit at the end of the tunnel while we are jointly working towards something that the community is in need of.
Okay.
Right, and excuse me, I think it's absolutely critical that, well, two things are addressed. Number one, we have an MOU ready. Our law firm has billed us for it months ago. So obviously it's been ready for some time to address all of the ifs and whats and what if you do this and who goes first. As President Rodriguez said so well, we're willing to take that leap of faith and believe that the county is with us. Obviously, with your actions, they've proven that. So I think there are a few things that are critical. We have the MOU and can have it presented to you as soon as you would like. We want to move forward quickly. Some interesting thoughts come to mind. One is we need to continue to work well and closely together. We all know that we are in desperate need of a pool. Our community needs it desperately, and we are willing to, I think, look at that. I don't want to speak for my board, but I think they are willing to look at our timelines and maybe reconsider how that would work in an effort to bring about a pool or to joint venture with the county and or the city to bring about a pool as soon as possible. The other kind of ironic piece is if I understand your minutes correctly, you voted to close your portion of the road. So in essence, we could create a one-way there if need be. I mean, I'm just saying.
I know.
I mean, not that I would want to do that, but I mean, we need to move forward, and
I love your thinking outside the box, and that we may have to do that. I mean, not necessarily that, but just thinking outside the box.
I
What else can we
appreciate
do
that,
to
but
make
that
it
was
happen?
more in jest. I
know.
want to make sure you
But
realize
I
that.
love your thinking outside the box, like I said. You may have a question here, Superintendent Perales from Supervisor Munzer.
So the MOU you said that you've had drafted.
Right.
That includes what?
You're testing my memory. It
Sorry.
includes
I mean,
the
is it
temporary closure of Nash Road. It includes the building of the bypass road, and it includes the exchange of land for the parkway or park land.
Okay, so is that a three-way MOU?
Yes, sir.
So, so City of Hollister, the County of San Benito, and the High School District
Absolutely,
are all
yes.
involved in that MOU.
Right, and I think given the actions that have taken place so far, it may need to be updated.
Right.
But it is ready to bring about, and we've spent quite a lot of time and money. I believe it's $13,000 if you want to quote us on that, to have that MOU drafted and prepared in order for us to be ready to move forward.
Okay, why don't I recommend that that goes to council as soon as possible? Council, you haven't seen it yet? Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's been so long.
I
There
know.
is an MOU is in the package. I'm not sure if that's the same one we're all
Is that
talking
the
about.
same one, the one that's in our packet?
Mr. Warwithal says this is it right here, we've already approved it. I'd have to take some time to look at it, but I do have a copy sitting in my inbox, and I can go ahead and, share it with you. And again, I do think that given, there are some other pieces that need to fall into place, and I just want to bring to light. And in order for us to deed land to another public entity, even a private entity, being a school district, there are several steps that have to take place. One of the easiest ways to go about it is to exchange a piece of land. Worth, location does not come into play. It is simply that we are exchanging a piece of land for another piece of land. And I'm talking about the parkway now.
Right.
So we would have to look at that and take that into consideration. And the only rationale around choosing to exchange land is that it would make the process significantly faster and easier.
Okay, so I just recommend that Supervisor Rivas has a question.
Yeah, I think, and that's a great point. We do have this MOU. If the city isn't, if they want to drag their feet, why don't we cut them out of the MOU at this point, and let's move forward for the transfer of land, and we can begin the process for doing this park access road, this eventual bypass. I don't think that there's any problem with that.
I think, Supervisor Rivas, I think that we would have to look at building the bypass. I mean, I assume you're speaking about building the bypass road.
Yeah,
right.
the park access road.
And I think that's
we can
something
move
that
on that at least.
my board would definitely consider.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then once that process is at least begun, then I'm sure it'll be a lot easier to get the city to buy in.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Supervisor Batella.
Yeah, I personally would prefer to invite the city council members one more time to some sort of committee level meeting to see how we could work this MOU to their satisfaction before writing them out.
Right.
Maybe that might be the end result, but I'd rather have them included and given an opportunity to see what we could do to make sure that, we're reaching some level of consensus, because we really do want to work with them.
We do.
Absolutely. So,
So
if I
my
could
suggestion
recommend,
is to have at least another committee meeting at the chair's appointment, meeting with, the city and the school, and go over the details once more with the MOU in front of them, and see what's acceptable, what's not, and fix it, bring it back to the respective boards, and see if we can go forward in unison again.
And Madam Chair, I would recommend, I know that you and Supervisor Batalo served on an ad hoc, so you guys have at least the history.
We do.
So I would recommend you two just, join up again and let's tackle this issue.
Okay. Supervisor Munzer, you had another question?
Yeah, I kind of lost the floor there. It wasn't quite done.
I
But anyway.
I apologize. My apologies.
Well, it was all about me yesterday. I guess it's all about you today.
I was going to say, you had a lot of time yesterday, so go ahead, Supervisor.
To the superintendent, I know I voiced some frustration, but I want to say to you today, I appreciate what I'm hearing from you today about working collaboratively with the pool, the library, because I have not heard that before. People have always come, county, solve our problems. County, build a new library, you know, just whatever. And I really appreciate you coming today and saying that, and I look forward to working with you and solving some of these other problems that.
Absolutely. You have my complete word, and my staff is backing to work together to bring about solutions. I was just at San Jose State yesterday and noticed the I guess you could call it uniqueness and just how nice it is to have a public library on a school campus and to see kids. And I'm sure we can figure out the details. And there are a lot of details that'll come with that. But it's not impossible. And the only way we will have this, we've talked about tennis courts as well, to improve our community is by working together. And we are fully committed.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Munzer, are you done?
I am done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So at this time, I will,
Can I
Billy,
ask
go
just
ahead,
one?
please.
And just to get back to Supervisor Rivas' original comments on how I said that the meeting went well meant the meeting went well from the perspective of at least my council began to open their eyes and would consider to do something other than what they had originally stated. I also want to agree with Supervisor Rivas in his last statements about, look, the reality is that it's your road, it's your park, it's your jurisdiction. And I know Shirley may disagree with this, but you guys can go all the way down through the process prior to us closing a road. We're not stopping you from building a road and you receiving property for a county park. The only ball that we have in this game is the closure of Nash Road, and that's something that we can work with. But it's not necessarily, I don't want it to feel like the city is holding up a county park or a county bypass around our road and libraries and parks when we really don't have anything to do with it. It's your money, it's their money or their land, and it's a swap. The city doesn't have much of a say, to be honest with you. So depending on how far you want to go, that's fine. If you want to have our input again and we have a joint meeting, that's fine as well. I just want to make sure that I don't want it to feel like the council is holding you guys up on a deal, because the only thing that the council is really holding us, the school up on, is really just closing Nash Road. Half of Nash Road.
Half a Nash Road.
Yeah.
The one way. Okay.
Well, yeah,
Shirley?
no, we're probably not going to do a one-way road.
Shirley, you have a comment?
Yeah. Okay, so just to clarify a couple of points that have been made. With regard to the MOU that Mr. Perales referenced, the agreement that's in your packet, I wrote that, and with input from the city attorney and the school district's attorneys. If there's a separate MOU that's been drafted by the school district's attorneys, we have not seen it. Regarding the closure of Nash Road, the problem is that my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, is that basically the center line, one half of it is owned by the county and one half by the city. So you can't close just to the center line of a road, which is why the city's involved. And I completely agree with Billy Avera. There's a whole process you have to go through before you can close the road. And the board and the city council are not legally able to exercise their discretion to decide they're going to close the road without going through a notice public hearing, adopting a resolution in which they make certain findings that would be essentially, in my opinion, impossible to make unless and until there's a new road that's constructed, fully constructed and in place and open before you could make the findings that would allow closing permanently Nash Road. Joe Horwoodle and I worked very hard to find a creative solution, which is there's an exemption that will allow for the temporary closure around a school under the circumstances that are laid out in this agreement. My personal preference would have been to not even go there until the new road was built, but we were told that by the high school that they would not even talk about the land for constructing the bypass until Nash Road was closed. So this was our creative solution to allow everybody to move forward. And in my opinion, the city council, if they're willing, could make the findings and agree to the temporary closure just as readily as your board could when it's properly presented to them at a public hearing and to your board as well. Do you have any other questions for me regarding the process or the terms of the agreement as currently drafted?
No, the superintendent made reference to to an MOU, but we may be speaking about the same MOU because it was reviewed by the school district council.
Right.
So it may be one and the same, Shirley. We can check that. Absolutely. Yeah, so I think at this time, I'll go ahead and appoint myself and Supervisor Botello to sit on the committee to get this thing moving forward. CAO, if you could arrange a meeting between the city, the district, and the county, we will get this moving and see what direction and how quickly we can move forward with all the pieces, including all three agencies.
Yeah, because I really think we could move relatively quickly with a temporary type of closure during school hours to add to the safety, and that sooner than later, and then build the bypass road, and hopefully we'll evaluate what needs for the long-term solution for Nash Road, whether the temporary closures is enough, or if it needs to be permanently closed. But I think we got to try to go for the home run, and all three agencies working together.
Okay. Joe, if you could come up to the podium, I have a question as far as time is concerned. If the city of Hollister were to agree to the closure, and that process would take, what are we looking at from the time that happens to the time that the road could be built?
My guess, as we were talking yesterday about it, is that it's probably about a 6-month construction project to get the base road in. We may phase it. For the design work is probably going to be another 6 to 9 months by the time you start the procurement, go through that, get the design approvals on it so that we could go out to bid. So realistically, I would pencil in 2 years and then work backwards to try to shorten it. But just from where we're at right now, I would be looking at 2 years to have that road operational.
Constructed, going, okay, very good, because we still have to do the
We got to finish the CEQA process, which we can't do the deal with the actual closure question in front of the board and the council. That can't come until we have the traffic analysis to use to have that action. And then that, there's a bunch of dominoes that have to flow. And so that's, again, why we structured the MOU the way we did, was to try and start some of those dominoes falling sooner rather than making them all sequential.
Okay, and I think what I'd like to do with the committee is to set a timeline of how quickly things can happen and try to meet that timeline as best as we can.
And based on the conversations both yesterday and then this morning, I was going to go through and start putting together a scope of work that we could put out for bid to get an engineering firm in to help with the design work, rather than waiting till the end of the EIR process. We can advance that piece of it. It's a little bit at risk of us putting dollars into a project that if we don't know we have the land, and I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but at least I could get the procurement done, maybe take a couple of months out of that. So there's some things like that in putting together a schedule we can share with you of what an aggressive schedule versus what a kind of normal schedule would look like.
Okay, I'd like to see an aggressive schedule personally, so. Supervisor. Okay, so any other questions before we're going to go ahead and take a break. I don't think that we have to make any decisions other than the appointment. Any revisions would have to be done following our meetings with the agencies. So we'll take a break and come back and continue with item number 32. Thank you. Well, let's get started. I know. Oh. We're ready. I like the story that Sam Farr told about her. Remember he had a young intern? Keep going. Let's get this show on the road. Okay, I'd like to continue our meeting. Thank you so much. And council, if we can wait for Joe, if you could get council. Thank you. Okay, we'll continue with we'll start with item number 32. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, on June 2nd, 2015, your board discussed homeless activities during that board meeting and requested to actually bring that conversation back to your board here. That was actually scheduled for July 21st. But what we wanted to do today is just kind of give you a brief overview of kind of where we're at. So we have Jim Riding-Sword, our Health and Human Services Director, as well as Joe Horridell here from our Public Works Office to kind of give you a brief of where we're at with regards to homelessness, some of the activities that are going on, as well as the activities, what we're planning to do with the service center and so forth. So Jim and Joe?
Rocks, paper, scissors. So I'll give the kind of the first piece, and then Jim can talk about the survey. So the county has been working on our homeless service center that we have engaged an architect who is now looking at the south side site and working with the homeless coalition committee that is working on solutions for solving homelessness here in the county. As a part of that project, we are working through the scoping, making sure that we've got the right amenities or facilities that would go into that new building. That work will be at our next meeting of the homeless committee, where we've been working to decide, what is the services, the clientele, do we put kitchens in it, those types of questions, as well as dealing with the larger question of how we're ultimately going to run the facility. And there's been a lot of work that's been happening. Jim's staff's been taking the lead on that. I'll let him kind of really drill down on, but it's really getting to the question is this going to be a county-built and operated facility? Is it a county-built and nonprofit operated, or is it a nonprofit built and operated? And that has some fundamental decisions about how we will go into the next steps. The other piece of this is that homelessness in solving it is not just a one-step kind of do it. It's really a continuum of how do you take someone who's living on the streets and getting them back into regular, everyday types of housing, and what are the services that they need to help successfully re-enter back into traditional housing. And that is a real progression of housing types. There's been a lot of talk about tiny homes, and the board was talking about that at your meeting. That is one type of housing that can be used at different parts of that continuum of solving homelessness. So part of what the next steps as we work through the Homeless Service Center is there are then other stages of group homes or small homes, assisted living type arrangements. All of those fit into that continuum, and so we want to make sure that we're putting kind of the right tools or the right solutions to the individual problems that we need to resolve, or the issues, all the way back to getting individuals back into traditional living environments. So I'll turn it to Jim.
Thank you. So just to follow up on what Joe said, first of all, there was a question at your last meeting about the homeless encampment. So we have had some conversations since that time with the city, and I got an update on it yesterday. So the plan for that right now is the city is in the process of contracting for someone to go in and clean out the debris. They then are exploring the possibility of putting a locked gate across the service road in order to, kind of discourage people from bringing debris in there. They are in the process of procuring porta potties to put out into the encampment. They have met with the residents of the encampment and have provided them with trash bags, which they're then picking up and taking out of there. And there's been serious discussion with the residents at the encampment about, their involvement in terms of monitoring, what's going on out there. The population, as I understand it, at the encampment seems to have stabilized now. And so those are the measures that we're going to take. We know that those are only temporary measures until we can get to more permanent solutions. As Joe referenced, we do have the CDBG grant for $1.5 million in order to put together a homeless service center out on South Side Road. We've been in discussion with the state about the ways in which that money can be used. We plan to have a discussion later this week with the county administrator on some of those options. I've directed staff to put together probably about a 20-minute presentation at your board meeting on the 21st to go over that material. We are putting together preliminary budgets on the ongoing operation of a homeless service center. We have identified a couple of sources of funding that we think that we can begin to use for that. One of those sources of funding, hopefully, we'll have that study done and submitted to the state for approval for that by the end of this week. And so I'm hoping that we'll have an update on some of those sources of funding for you when we come back on the 21st. Let's see. And as Joe said, it is kind of a continuum of care, and so I think what we need to do is look at it in pieces. The first piece is to get the homeless center, service center done and to have an operational budget for that. The second piece is to begin to talk about temporary and transitional housing within the community where people can begin to move to those things. We're having conversations about that with CHSBA and CSDC just to kind of explore those possibilities. I believe that staff is putting together about a 6 or 7 stage kind of approach to things. And one of the stages, obviously, is a workforce stage where we talk about how can we help people get back into the workforce and begin to support themselves. There are models of how that works around the country that we've been looking at. And so I just wanted to, update behind Joe on where we are. But right now, the focus is on the homeless service center and the ongoing operations of that homeless service center. And I'm hoping that we can put more detail to that in a presentation on July the 21st. So comments or questions? Otherwise, I just have my normal comment.
Any comments, questions? Supervisor Patel?
I really appreciate the report, Jim. You're
Yeah.
hitting all the points that
Yes.
that I was hoping that you would this morning. And with the work being done to deal with the current problems with the encampment that we have down on
Yeah.
the end of 4th Street, I think all those things need to be happening. I don't see what, I didn't notice if the restrooms were up or facilities are there now, or?
I don't know if they are. I haven't been out there, and,
Well,
but
I don't think,
that was the.
I don't think so, and
Yeah.
to me, I would hope that the city could just pick up the phone and say to a porta potty company and say, we need restrooms here today. And they're pretty good about delivering right away.
yeah.
And it's not a process. It's, I assume it's, they would be doing that. And maybe if we don't see it very soon, maybe we should just do it ourselves. I don't know if there's any funding available, but it's not that much money. And, you know, the human dignity of having a facility available that you could use in some sort of privacy, it's absolutely essential. As far as the security, that is something that the city of Hollister needs to deal with, and hopefully that will help some of the concerns in the neighborhood. But and with the awareness that those folks, you know, should have, that, you know, they have a responsibility to that area as well, that these other private properties have to enjoy their, you know, environment as too. I'm happy here that the priority for our staff is to build and operate successfully the homeless center. I think that's what we have to focus on right now, and that's a huge undertaking, and we shouldn't be diverted off of that focus with sometimes what you hear from political folks and maybe some outside noise on other aspects of the program. Not at this time, anyway. Good ideas needs to be evaluated and looked at, but right now our focus should really be on getting a facility that could bring in people that need a little bit of help, give them those services, and see if we could move them on to a better standard of living. So I'm happy that you have that very clear and focused. So I appreciate this report, and I look forward on July 21st.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Supervisor De La Cruz?
If we do continue to move on building a center with full support services, where are those funds will be coming from? Will they be general fund allocation, or will they be coming from some other fund source?
We are looking at some fund sources right now that would allow us to draw down some federal funds for operation of homeless services, that we do not have them in hand. We'll be submitting a study on that issue to the state by Friday. It will probably be a few months before we hear back on that. We also have attended the annual conference of the California Community Economic Development Association. And at that meeting, we heard from numbers of funders about, you know, the types of funds that are available out there for a wide range of projects. I have to say, at least for myself, I seem to be focused on this particular one. So we're exploring, you know, what are the possibilities of moving forward with that. If we get approval on the submission on Friday, that will be a funding source that will be available from year to year. And again, we're just kind of waiting to hear on that. As for local funding, I keep hearing different things, and I need to go back and check in with people to see, you know, where they are on those things. But it's my goal to run this program with none or minimal county general funds.
Okay, that's good. And in reference to my fellow supervisors, Botello, I do want to make sure, I do want to issue the position that on this one, we continue the effort with building a facility with the funds that we're applying for and the one on Southside Road. But at the same time, we should not exclude ourselves from any other ideas. I think ideas should never be shy or be afraid of ideas. I think it's always healthy to have those discussions. At the same time, move forward with what the wishes of the board are. And in terms of having a dumpster or a potty pile out there, God, it's a shame that we don't have one right now.
Okay.
We should have had it.
I will follow up on that.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't waste management or landfill, don't they offer free dumpsters, toilet rooms for situations of how we have right now back in the river?
Well, we have the ability to receive dumpsters from the landfill operator for county projects. We don't have for portable toilets, but so that's one of the things.
Well, we just approved an increase that, they're guaranteed to make bucks off the taxpayers. They in the kindness of their heart, they should really, say, you know what, we're ripping off the taxpayers already, so let's pitch in something back a little bit.
Any other comments?
Thank
Jim,
you,
I want
Madam
to
Chair.
thank you.
Right.
Your leadership has been exemplary. I've worked with you and sat on the committee for addressing this, and the resources that you have connected us with are wonderful, not only with other cities, but at the state level. And you're always looking for ways to find us, grants and more resources so that we can do this and make it happen. The plan is moving along. It's moving forward in faster pace than we ever expected it. And I think it really was all about commitment and making sure that we said, you know what, we want to do this and get the partners together. And so far, we've been very successful. I hope that we can complete it all the way to, to the end where we do see a day
Right.
service center. And I think it is going to happen. So,
Okay.
so thank you.
Well, thank you, and so my final comment is at 6 o'clock tonight, I plan to sit down and give my portion of my community effort to pushing the Warriors to victory.
We'll be joining you. Okay, any comments from the public at this time? You may come up.
That's right.
He's not a Warrior fan, is he?
Good morning. Thank you, Board. I'm Pat Lowe, and I'm Chair of the Homeless Coalition. And I'm here today to ask that we take it one step farther. Your staff has given an excellent presentation. I agree with everything that's been said. But there's so much confusion in the community. I don't think there's confusion in this boardroom, but in the community about the tiny house concept. People are even calling and asking to sign up for these homes. And I think it's really important that the public knows that right now, the money that the county has is for the facility. And as you all know, you've voted in for the facility and what it is going to entail through the CDBG grant process. And I think it's really important that the community understands that the tiny homes is something in the future, but it's not part of this, and there's not a dedicated funding source for those homes. And, it's an idea I think we need to explore. Like Supervisor Delacruz said, we need to explore many ideas, but I think that if the board could possibly go on record stating that the money now is for the facility and make it real clear to the public so the public understands, that would be very helpful in what we're trying to accomplish.
And we can go on record to say that, because it is important to clarify that this is phase one of what we're going to do. This money that we got, this grant, is for the day facility, and that is all that money will be used for at this time. And we're exploring ways to sustain it. And then anything else will come as a different phase from the monies that was received. And I believe we have 1.5 million dedicated to the day facility, correct?
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, maybe, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, let me go with Supervisor Rivas and then Supervisor De La Cruz.
Right, yeah, I certainly agree with all that's been said. I appreciate the previous comments by Ms. Lowe. I think that it is extremely important that we certainly address our support, for this center, because, as I stated at a previous meeting, that's certainly been the goal of this community for some time, well over a decade, and the work, I was happy to be part of, the planning process of the very first homeless coalition, where Kathy Ruiz, I believe, was the chair. And, their goal and their discussion was a permanent center, and we're almost there. It's 2015. This was back in 2003, I believe. And here we are in 2015, and this is almost a reality. And so, I made some comments about the tiny homes, and I expressed my frustration, how it's a distraction. And certainly I think as a community we have to be open to new ideas. But I think right now I'm of the mindset, and I'm certainly remaining focused to our ultimate goal in having a functioning center. And all other ideas are certainly welcome, but they certainly don't play a part in what we want to accomplish here as a county in our immediate future. And so I think that's what we need to be focused on. We could formalize that at a future meeting. I think that is a great suggestion. I think we should move on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor De La Cruz?
Well, I was going to say something like what Supervisor Rita said is, let's just do a resolution today and do it in that direction. But I'm looking to see if we're allowed to do any action today. None
No,
required.
not today.
None.
Today
Okay.
is really just a
So,
report.
Future date will be good.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, I'm not sure. I did ask the public. Anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Okay, well, thank you. There's no action required, I don't believe. I think we're just
No.
receiving
I
this
have
report.
one comment.
Oh, one
Maybe,
comment.
maybe that could come back on the
Yeah.
21st.
I was just going to mention that on the 21st, we're actually going to come back and give a detailed homeless report and open for discussion. So we'll bring that back during that time.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, item number 33, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this item was also a request from your board to come back, for staff to come back to your board. We had a great, I think, session on June 3rd, a joint meeting with the two cities as well as yourself, the Board of Supervisors, in the evening time to discuss sales tax, the different measures and the different opportunities. I think there was a lot of clarity from that meeting. And your board did request to come back to discuss potential unincorporated transaction and use sales tax measures. So Sarah, she's been our go-to person with sales tax, so she's going to go ahead and kind of wrap this up and get direction from you to move forward with this.
Okay.
Good morning again. Yes, go Warriors. Sorry, Matt, but we'll loosen up a bit before tonight. So as Ray stated, you did ask for this to come back and focus on just an unincorporated measure. So before throwing it to the board for open discussion and public comment, I'm going to go over a few different things. First, some political activity guidelines, just to kind of refresh our memories of where those limitations fall, and it will also help specify our timeline and what we need to accomplish. We'll review some of the decisions that will need to be made, not necessarily today, and then the staff recommendation.
Is that date right? January 2017?
Should have been 2016.
I thought so.
Yeah, my apologies. I can switch to that. My apologies. It's
That's
correct
okay.
in the timeline. 2016.
Okay.
Time's ticking. So first, the political activities guideline, I apologize, I'm just going to kind of read through this with you. Basically, what I've been provided by County Council is that a few of these points, in addition to numerous documents and paperwork of other cities and counties, but I thought I'd summarize briefly for you here, that pre-ballot expenditures such as polling, which will be part of our recommendation, media and website development are acceptable as expenditures of public dollars, as long as all our polling results are made public. We can't present it to one side and not the other. It has to be given to all. That public funds cannot be expended to support or oppose the ballot measure, and they must be neutral and balanced. That staff, elected officials, and yourself can use time to develop the measure, but that we may not sell or advocate the measure during our paid county time. The board cannot appoint a campaign committee. The board can appoint and be involved in a public education committee, which must be education-driven, not advocacy, and that any privately funded advocacy campaign committee needs to be separate from the public education committee. Lastly, I put here that if staff is to be working, or elected officials or board members, on their own time, it has to be on their own time. There must be use of vacation, sick leave, or not sick leave, but vacation, management leave, something like that, or the lunch hour, and it has to be documented. So moving forward, just kind of giving that quickly, our timeline. It is January 2016 that you see here highlighted, hopefully well, that staff basically needs to really start working on our milestones. You see the first blue set of flags here. Milestone 1 is the final deadline for the governing body to file the request with County Elections Department. They do prefer it sooner, so that's why I have kind of January and February highlighted. If we can start getting that stuff done quicker, that would be the best. But that's really when we need to know what that ballot measure is going to read and say. Is it a 0.5%? Is it permanent? Is it not? What does an advisory question look like if there is one? So that's when we need to have that all situated. If you look July, August, September, October, November, from pretty much now until there's something on the ballot, that would be our prime time for public education. So at the point of it being on the ballot, though, that's when things are different. And certain things have to happen in regards to staff cannot work on it anymore, as I understand from county council. It's on the measure, and it's now considered campaigning regardless because it's out there. But basically, I'm hoping that this timeline kind of helps the board members and staff as well to determine the proper timing for public education, and then be it any kind of town hall meetings that board members, or if there is a stakeholders committee, that private public campaigning portion, then this timeline could possibly help either or. Let's see. I'll save the milestones. It is just basically I provided both options for June and the November election. So if one time, depending on which time we decide to go, if not both. I saved this from our last one just to kind of go over what the dollar amounts looked like and what the rates would look like depending. I know we've kind of talked this to death, but if we were to look at the unincorporated, a 0.5% to a 1%, I put the dollar amounts we could potentially expect, 1.1 to 2.2 million in the unincorporated area based on our revenue sales base. Also, we have to keep in mind that COG would be most likely going at the same time, if not before or after. So whatever they decide to do number-wise will affect all of the county. So you can see here, January, that would be when the rates are effective, and you can barely read that, but that could potentially be our rate. And the city of Hollister at 9, and then San Juan Bautista at 8.75. So I wanted to kind of give you that. Oops. And then depending if whatever Hollister decides to do, they could either be stagnant at 9, we would be at 8.5 to 9. So the rates would be comparable, not exactly the same, but at least closer to each other. And then finally, my recommendation is that we go out and do a statistically, basically a public opinion survey, so that we can see what's out there. It is allowable to spend. I am preparing an RFP. The other option was I didn't provide council enough time to determine yet if the proposal to do a contract to get a survey done would be allowable under the exception of professional services. Also an option. Either way, I'm already working towards an RFP to have that a public opinion survey done, much like COG did, so that you guys can have some more factual information in front of you. So that is what I have.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from the board at this time? Supervisor Batella?
So where would the money come from to do the survey? Do you have an idea how much it would cost and detail that we'd get out of it?
I haven't have an idea yet of the cost, because I was actually hoping to do an RFP, or at least be able to research what successful counties have done and who they've gone with. I would expect that it would start under the $10,000 mark and would be budgeted from our county administrative office budget. But that was my hope with the RFP, since I've started to kind of get that idea of what those dollar amounts could look like coming in.
And we probably did budget it for something like $10,000, $15,000 survey for yesterday. I would assume.
I would have to check with Melinda.
We're already a spend the contingency money.
Yes, we have, depending on what the cost would be, we probably have up to $50,000 that we could pinpoint right away in the budget.
Did you
for it.
anticipate maybe the board making that decision?
Yes, I did.
And that's why that money's
Yeah.
there, it's not for
Yeah.
something else? Okay, thank you.
So.
Okay, Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I really appreciate the staff report and all the time that's been invested in this as we've had a few meetings and some lengthy discussions we've been set with the city of Hollister. I'm opposed to going out and hiring a polling firm. I think that we all understand, I'm of the opinion that it's going to be very challenging to pass an unincorporated tax. Whether we need to spend $10,000 to realize those concerns, I don't think it's worth it. I think that certainly, we need to go for an unincorporated tax, and I think that, we certainly, or at least I know what it's going to take to accomplish that, and whether we can be successful or not, I don't know, but I don't think a public opinion poll is going to do us, any service at all. I think that we certainly have just got to, aside from our roles here at the county, just in our own personal time, we have to assemble, a good team to tackle the, all the efforts that are accomplished throughout a campaign. I think that, I think we have a strong message, and we just have to formulate that message. I don't think we need to throw away $10,000 to $20,000 to say, hey, this is going to be tight. It's going to be tight regardless. So I would not support any action to hire a public opinion firm.
Okay. Any other comments? Did I already call you? Okay, Supervisor.
Well, I just,
Patel.
I recognize Supervisor Rivas's background is, it's, very politically, he went to college for that. And so I absolutely respect his opinion on it, but I wanted to ask him a question as far as would perhaps the information that's derived out of this survey would the public support a general tax if it's dedicated to public safety? We're obviously short-staffed at the public safety areas of the county. We're short-staffed the whole county, but would they be more inclined to support it if we added deputies on the street? Or is the library enough to carry the day? And that would be, some of the information I would try to derive out of that, or as far as the level of support, or, folks would give us a half a cent just for, to use in our good judgment.
Mm-hmm. Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I can
go
respond. Yeah, I think that that's the benefit of having a public opinion poll, is you get to gauge the interest of the electorate, right? But I think that is information that can be collected throughout the state from other communities and from experts in Sacramento that certainly have all those answers. I don't think it's going to take us to spend money to get those answers, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I know that we cannot advocate, is that one of the things you said, Sarah, but we can educate. So with these dollars, perhaps instead of spending them on a polling company, if we went and printed things that would show what 1% would give us in the way of dollars, and maybe ideas of where that money can go, because I know we can't state where we're going to spend the money because this is a general sales tax. So, but ideas of how that money perhaps could be used or divvied up for either the library or public safety. I would rather see the money be spent on educating and doing that. That would be my take. So, let me open it up to the public.
Hi, my name is Mr. Public.
You are.
And I have been Mr. Public here for a couple of days. Appreciate the time. you all know where I stand on this. As far as the basic question goes, I want to see a 1% sales tax in the unincorporated areas. It only takes 50% to pass. I believe that whether it passes or fails will depend basically on how willing each of you are to go out to the constituencies in the unincorporated areas and say, we need this money. And we do need the money. And, you know, I don't think we spend all our money well. Nobody spends all their money well, but I don't think we spend all our money well. But that's not the issue. The issue is the one I mentioned the other day. I'm not saying this to gain headlines, but, you know, I feel like we are a family that's one paycheck away from being in a lot of trouble. We've had, you know, we've been saved by some one-time stuff here and there and whatever, but, you know, maybe 90% of the real money that flows through our county comes from the federal government and comes from the state government to service our underserved population. And if you took that out of the county, this county would collapse. There's nothing left. Okay, I mean, most of the people work down there. Most of the money goes there. You know, we got $13 million in aid and $15 million in, you know, other programs. What do we got? 80? I don't know how many people we got down there between mental health and health and human services and what you charge. You know, that state and federal government pay for. It's a lot of money. Health, and there's not much left after that because we only take in on an equal basis. Not because of the tax rate, but the 1% tax rate, as I told you before, I figured it out. We only take in $73 a head. And $73 a head in the entire county. That includes Hollister and the county. And that has nothing to do with the tax rate. That is the fundamental basic tax rate from the state. You know, the 3/4% that we get back, and I will wrap up. We only take out in $73 a head. They're taking in $141 a head in Santa Clara. They're taking in more than $100 a head in Monterey County. They're taking in more than we are per head in Fresno, more than we are per head in Merced. And with all respect to our neighbors, if they're taking more than we are in Merced and our folks make 50% more on median, we're not doing a good job. So if we don't raise the tax rate and we keep taking in that much money, we're going to be broke all the time. This will be the same conversation every year. We have no money to do anything. We're just hanging on by our fingernails, okay? So I thank you for the extra time, and I think you should spend the money on education. I agree. Spend the money on, and spend your time and your effort and your political capital on getting the thing passed for 1%. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else from the public that would like to address the board? Yeah, I'll bring it back and see where we stand for this. The only thing that we can do today is to authorize going out to a third-party consultant. If we want to discuss doing something different, we need to agendize it for July the 21st as far as percentage and a timeline and how we want to spend, how much money we want to spend on the education part. So with that in mind, then we just need to decide on whether we want to move forward with the third-party consultant. So I recommend that on depending on how this goes, that July 21st will be the day that we discuss the particulars of if that's the way we want to go. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I just want to thank Sarah for coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning to work on her presentation.
No problem.
Go Warriors.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much. You have given us you always give us good information, but it gives us a starting point of which direction we want to go. And so it doesn't look like there's any desire at this point to move forward with that.
Okay.
And so then we will direct the CAO with the consensus of the board to come back on the 21st, and we can discuss a percentage, a timeline, and costs for education. Is that a consensus? Okay?
Yep.
Looks like it is.
Yep.
All right, the last item on the agenda before we go into closed session is the Planning Department. Item number 34, CAO Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item has also been requested by your board to come back at every board meeting to give you an update with regards to the general plan. At yesterday's budget hearings, we did discuss this future year, fiscal year 15-16 budget, and I had stated that I would actually come back to your board with a cost analysis of kind of what we spent and kind of where we're at and what the budget was in the past. So I kind of wanted to run that through with you real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Byron right after. So over the last 15 years, there has been budgeted $1.62 million for the general plan. So back in 09-10, 255,000, 10-11, 570,000, 11-12, 470,000, 12-13, 58,000, 13-14, 70,000, and 14-15 was budgeted 150, but we also did a transfer of funds for $50,000 for Miller Star legal services. Out of the $150,000 that was budgeted, again, this was the last part of that. Those years were for EMC, and prior to that was Mitnier and Harnish. The 14-15 budget was $150,000, which was budgeted. $129,000 was spent, and we have about what's left, about $20,000. Again, there's depending on what other services or what other invoices we'll receive. So I just wanted to give a quick, brief update. I'd promised that information to you. And again, this new year, we budgeted another $50,000 for any last items that we may need to deal with, and Byron suggested that. So I want to go ahead and turn it over to Byron to give your board an update of kind of where we're at with everything and where we're at headed with the general plan.
Byron, before you start,
Yeah.
back on the dollar amount,
Yeah.
what was the total, please?
$1,623,000.
And does that include the 50,000 for the attorney for the
County
review?
Council, that's correct.
That includes it?
That include
Okay.
the $50,000, that's correct.
Okay, very good, thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, Byron, you may
Can I
start.
give you an update of where we are right now? We received a dozen or so comment letters as a result of circulation of the environmental document. We're currently crafting responses. We should be done with those, or I should have them back from the consultant today. Some are fairly innocuous. You know, we're in favor of this, we're not in favor of that. Thank you for your comment. Others do require some significant work on the part of the consultant and staff to craft responses. I know you have a few questions about some of those letters too, and I'll let you ask those questions in a minute. As far as the schedule goes, the public notice has gone out to the newspaper for a planning commission meeting on the evening of July 1st. Staff's recommendation at that meeting is going to be to recommend approval of the general plan and certification of the environmental document to bring to the board, and we're targeting July 21st for that board meeting. Ray mentioned the budget already, but we did have additional budgeting for next year to help with implementation. I've left some space. I was approached yesterday about some questions about specific letters, and if the board wants to ask anything specific about what's in the comments, now would be a good time.
Any comments, questions? Supervisor Munzer?
Okay, so just for the record, I was handed, at the end of the AMBAG meeting last week, I was handed the comment letter from Caltrans. And there's a couple of things that are glaring. The first thing, which I actually brought up when I first saw it, was apparently the consultant is using the San Benito model for the traffic analysis. This is a model that has not been vetted by AMBAG or even our San Benito Council of Government as far as being a model that has been studied. And I guess my question is, how did that become the model for the general plan?
So AMBAG is the regional model. We did use the AMBAG model for the regional transportation impacts. AMBAG did let the county know that we could use the San Benito County model, as it's referred to focus in deeper on our local streets, which the AMBAG model doesn't take into account for, as long as we used the AMBAG's data and AMBAG's assumptions. So it's consistent with the AMBAG model. And that's, to get any deeper than that, I'd have to have a traffic consultant or to explain the differences in the models. But the reason why we're using the San Benito County model is only where it's consistent with the AMBAG model to fill in the gaps where the AMBAG model is lacking.
Okay, and so you'll address Caltrans concerns
Yes.
in the letter? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And then the other issue, I lost it, is that apparently there was a policy written that San Benito County does not support, that San Benito County no longer supports the widening of Highway 101 within its boundaries?
There seems to be some confusion over that one. I actually spoke to a representative from Caltrans this morning to try to clarify that and clarify what their comment was. It's not that the county doesn't support widening of 101. If Caltrans wants to widen 101, absolutely, I think that the county would support it. It's that we are not collecting funds to contribute to the widening of 101. And so, and on top of that, widening of 101 is not required as a mitigation measure to accommodate potential future growth in the county. So if it's the response to Caltrans's comment will go back and say, we'll say we do support the widening of 101. However, we're not funding it, and nor is the widening of 101 required to accommodate San Benito County growth.
Okay, all right. Thank you for those answers.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, so certainly the question I have, and it looks like you can't answer that, is, I would like to get some more information on what the San Benito County model is. It seems kind of like a big, a decision that was made without the consent of a lot of interested parties. And so I would just, it'd be helpful, if you could send me an email or some background information. I really would like to know what this model is and how it was developed. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any Supervisor Tello?
Yeah, thank you. I know I've been writing, the CEO and you, Mr. Turner, Byron, for quite some time to get this thing done and crack the whip on that consultant. He needs to deliver this and deliver it yesterday because, we're talking about raising taxes, but I'm a believer that the economic engine is the best way to raise revenues to provide services, and we have a lot of opportunity out there right now for jobs and businesses to come in. We're not talking about residential, I'm not talking about that type of development, but jobs and businesses once this thing is done, and the sooner we get it, and hopefully July 21st, which is a little bit off the timeline that we've got in my desk here, is the date that we could adopt this and we could go and move forward, because I think, we could twink it forever, but we're at the point where we need to get this thing adopted and start living with the plan.
Yeah, and I agree with Supervisor Botello. It's time. And I know we were expecting it by the end of June, but we now are going to be 21 days later, but it's, if we can have it and approve it on the 21st of July, I'm going to really celebrate that day. Thank you, Byron. Any comments from the public at this time? I welcome you. Do you have any speaker cards?
I have one speaker card from Joe. How do you pronounce last name, sir? I'm sorry. How do you pronounce it? Very carefully.
You're bigger than him.
Yeah, it's pronounced Jackaloni. So thank you, Board, for giving me a few minutes here. I've been sitting on the sideline now for 6 years. I've watched this board and the board before go through all this. And Supervisor Barros, I agree with you. This board, this county has done everything. You've been through, let me get my notes here as I've been listening. You've been through 3 consultants. You finally have a decent consultant. I'm not sure if Byron's number 4 or number 5 that I've had to work with now, and he's great to work with. The county's hired an independent counsel, Miller Starr, to make sure that this general plan is bulletproof. It seems to be bulletproof. My personal feeling is no matter what is in this general plan, someone's going to crawl out from under a rock and sue the county no matter what. And it doesn't matter who it is. I can look every person in the face right now, and I know I've met with a lot of you. I've gone over our project with you. If this plan does not get adopted in July, we're gone. And that's 400 to 500 jobs. And I know I've addressed Margie directly on that since we're in your district, but I'm getting texts, emails from my partners and our funding people, and I'm out of excuses. I cannot go back to them one more time and say the county supervisor now is going to delay it another 21 days because there's a moth that flew over San Benito County and we're not sure if it's indigenous or something. It's ridiculous. It's time. You've spent $1,623,000 and we still don't have a general plan. And not only our project, but there's several other large projects that this county is going to lose out on. And I implore you to please pass this thing on the, what is it, the 21st?
21st
The
of
21st. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm speaking from the heart, and I'm over time, but we will be gone. And that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Marty? Mr. Public?
Thank you. I don't really represent the public because many people do not agree with me. Probably most people in the county do not agree with me, which suits me just fine because I'm combative and I'd rather have it that way. Then I know I'm right because the public's been wrong an awful lot. I want to talk about a road, and I'm going to talk about Route 25. You know, we've had a lot of discussions about Route 25 and how dangerous it is or whatever. I guess it must have hurt us because I guess over the last 2 days it sent us an answer. 2 people were killed. I think at least 2 people were killed. One 2 days ago, one yesterday. The road was closed for hours and hours and hours. It was a 5-person crash. And that can happen on any road. I the first guy to agree. But it happens more often on this kind of road where there's no room to get out of the way and people get antsy and they want to pass on the wrong side or whatever. People trying to pull out in the traffic on a badly designed intersections where they cross at 90 degrees and there's no traffic control, you know, and you're supposed to look both ways. People are moving faster than you think they are, and you got a big truck, and I don't know whose fault it was. I'm not blaming anybody. All I'm saying is, you know, it's got to the point where I don't care about what the word is about constraints. I don't care about the fact that we're not collecting any taxes to make Route 25. I want the public to understand this. The first 10 years of doing anything on Route 25 is to wait. And we could be on the list for waiting, whether we collect 1 penny or no pennies. We know it's true because we see other counties doing it. They're on the list. Now, we've had an inside political fight. Now all the blood is off the floor. The elections are over. Let's quit punishing ourselves. Let's get 25 on the constraint list, whether we have a dime for it or no dimes for it, so that the first 10 years can pass and we can finally start doing something. Otherwise, we won't have the first 10 years until we start. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. I know this was information only. but I am very pleased to hear that it'll come before us on July 21st. It's been a long time coming. So, anything else from the board? Okay. We'll have county council report on the closed session and then come back and report out, and I'll allow the public to comment on this item as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of Supervisors will now adjourn to closed session to discuss agenda item number 35 on today's agenda. Agenda item number 35 is to confer with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to subdivisions A and D1 of section 54956.9 of the Government Code. The name of the case is Pekin, formerly known as Montion versus Scagliotti et al., filed in the California Superior Court for the County of San Benito under case number CU 0300150. Thank you.
Okay, the public is invited to comment on this item, and Mr. Richmond, go ahead.
Thank you. My comment is, I simply cannot believe that this is still on our agenda. That's my comment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. So we'll adjourn to closed session, come back and report out ASAP.